What a day. Wow. So, about 40 years ago.
How many?
40, longer now. 45 maybe. My sister, who was just mentioned, I was lucky enough to have her bring me down here and expose me to this beach. And it's so great to come back here and see when we came up, the courts are full and people are playing and participating in this game. Sorry, I'll try to make that a little. Is that better? So anyway, what I was saying, I was lucky enough to get exposed to this beach a long time ago by my sister, and it's great to see the courts full again. And at that time, there was rumor of this kid who played with his pop on the outside courts, who was going to eventually be pretty good, and so eventually he and I got to know each other, and he and I became friends on days exactly like this as young kids. And we were here exposed to this beach, still does, but at that time it had an aura about it, and it was surrounded by legends, that some rich that were mentioned earlier, Henry, another, and Karch and I as kids got an exposure to those guys and participated in this aura of this beach that was pretty incredible, and feel really, really, really lucky to be part of that. And in the early days, we heard rumor. You'd mentioned Laz Henry. We had heard rumor of this Henry. Is that still working? No.
Roger.
Roger.
Over. There. Still there. Anyway, we had heard rumor.
Just stand there.
Of Henry and his abilities to hit the ball. And on this court right here, there was a story that Henry hit a ball from the left side, bounced it down into the ground right there, and it landed on the grass on the fly. So Karch and I used to come down here, and we built berms in the sand, and we would take a ball and we would beat it down as hard as we could and try to bounce it to the grass. And it couldn't be done, but we tried to do it anyway. So that exposure at that time on this, that exposure at that time on this beach showed us a lot of different things, but most importantly, we just got exposed to this beautiful place, this beautiful ocean, and a love of the game that lasted a lifetime. And we grew such a love and affection for this game that no matter what, we would try to get down here anytime, any place. And this beach is not as pristine all the time as it is right now. But Karch and I would race our bikes from our homes on the other side or from school, and we'd get down here, and sometimes it was just he and I. And we'd play in the rain. We'd play one-on-one in the rain, or we'd play in the wind. It didn't matter what the conditions were, we just couldn't get enough of it. So we developed at that time, an early age, a love for that, a love for the game. In high school at that time, our coach, Rick, who I heard wasn't going to be here today, but that's too bad. I wish I could have seen him. But anyway, he gave us a workout regimen through our high school years. I don't know if you remember that, Karch, but he was like a marathon runner, and he gave us a workout regimen that was incredible. It had stadiums, it had sprints, it had push-ups, sit-ups, and it was really strenuous workout. And what I vividly remember is that Karch took that like a grain of salt and was just part of what you needed to do to get to where you're going. And I needed some help in that realm, and I know that others did too. So Karch always had the ability to demonstrate a focus and a concentration on what needed to be done to achieve the next goal at hand. So anyway, towards our senior year, I think it was, Karch was evolving as an incredible player already at that point on the beach, and he had a chance to go play in Hermosa, as I remember, with Marco Ortega at the time, and I don't know if that's been done since, but Karch was in high school and he made it to the finals of an Open. And it was a Sunday night, and I get these rocks thrown at my window at about midnight, and I look out, and there he was. And he says, "John, you got to come down. You can't believe what happened." I come down and open the door, and we talked for I don't know how many hours about, you know, Karch's first breakthrough in an Open in high school. Which I don't know if that's been done. I don't know if that'll ever happen. I'm sure it will, but maybe not. So anyway, we just had incredible times through those years, and we were down here often. And like I said, some of the most memorable times were down here when it wasn't days like this. It was days of rain and days of wind, and just you and I. And I'll cherish those for a long forever. But anyway, through school, the other thing that people don't touch on much about Karch is that he was and is really astute, really brilliant, and he just had the ability to, through school, concentrate and basically get straight A's. So I don't know if everybody knows that about him, but I just want to give a quick shout out because we've raised our boys now together, Karch his, and I want to give a quick shout out to you, Laz, and to Tony, because I know now, I understand what that takes. So here's to you guys. So anyway, Karch's accolades on as the future went on, everybody knows about. He through high school, we won a championship. Into college, he won 3. He evolved onto the national team and played for 8 years on that. And if he hadn't have done that, who knows how many beach volleyball tournaments your son might have won. But
yeah.
he probably 200 and who knows how many, Karch, but a lot.
Here, here.
So still most wins ever by anybody. And I think it was in 1985 I was lucky enough to make the national team, and I got a year to play around with Karch on the Olympic team, and was really fortunate because the team had just won the gold medal. They were respected throughout the world, and we got to travel everywhere and see things that I'll remember for the rest of my life. But during that time, Karch had really come into his own, and he had really started to show how he could make people around him better at this game, which you've demonstrated forever. So when I was on the national team, I was on the bench, but I got to see how 6 guys worked together and played a game and played it right. And the essence of the reason that happened was really you. I mean, you were really the core of that team. You were what held it together, and you just never would let anybody lose. So here's to you for just making people around you better, because you're good at that. So anyway, on that national team, there was a Cold War going at that time, and we had a tournament in Japan that we got to play, and we lost to the Russians, as I remember, in the finals. It was the Cold War, it was the Russians, and they were staying, as I remember, in the hotel room, but in the floor below, and somehow I ended up down a floor after we had lost, and here's a bunch of these Russian guys that were celebrating. They were celebrating with vodka. We were upstairs and we were having some beers. We were kind of down and out because we had lost, as I remember, and I went up and I got our team, and we came down and we had a party with the Russians. And the Russians were drinking vodka, and what I remember of that night at that time, there was a guy named Alexander Savin, I think was his name, and he at the time was known as the best player in the world, but he was on his way out. His time had come and it was going, and Karch's time was coming, and it was his time. And what I vividly remember about that night and what made it so special was Alexander Savine during the Cold War in Karch with your arms around each other, drinking vodka. And 10, he'd say, "You're the best player in the world." He'd say to Karch, "You are the best player in the world," and Karch would go, "No, you're the best player." So anyway, it was a fun night, but it was pretty great to have two of the best players in the world during a Cold War with their arms around each other, celebrating team sport. That's pretty special. So the last thing I want to say is I feel so lucky to, in our lifetime, in our generation, to have been exposed to some incredible athletes. Wayne Gretzky comes to mind. I watched him play. Magic, Larry Bird, I got to watch them play. And Jack Nicklaus is an example of golf. Cal Ripken is an example in baseball. And I got to see all of them. And every once in a while, in a lifetime, you get exposed to somebody that has this little certain thing, and we all know what it is. It's just one step ahead, one step above, and that ability to make everybody around them better, which is the essence of team sport. So without further ado, I'd like to say congratulations to my good bud Karch and your court. And I'm stoked for you, man. You deserve it. And here's to you for making people around you better.
Excellent. Okay, now we are ready to introduce the man who we are going to name this court after. We spent many hours here. There's been, like all these guys have been saying, all the long history, John Lee and Greg coming up here, and Rafaro and Garcia, all these guys that helped make this beach so great. And then the next generation comes, and the next generation, and we get more great people and more great players, and really none greater than our next recipient, Karch Kurai.
Well, first of all, hopefully I don't blow the speaker out here. A huge thank you all to you all for coming out and honoring so many things here. A small part of it is me honoring Henry. We heard a lot of words about him and just East Beach. So thank you. I'm deeply touched to have a crowd of this size to come to honor Santa Barbara volleyball, or one of Santa Barbara's. Two things come to mind for me, and number one, we're nothing without our memories. If I lose my memory, I'm not me anymore. And so I have so many special memories here, and I'll just recount a few of them. As my dad Laz said, the courts used to be, in the 50s and 60s, more centered around the bathhouse, and so we still have some old film, but my first volleyball memory was that on weekends, because we were here, my dad was in his internship year of medicine and worked really hard during the week, 80 to 100-hour work weeks, and then our time together as a family with my mom Tony, my dad Laz, and I would be to come down here, and he'd get some games in, and then we'd bop the ball back and forth. And at first it was, could we keep it going 3 times, and then it was 6 times and 10, and just the challenge was to try to keep it going longer and longer. I'm impressed now that he had any energy to play with me between his games, because he expended so much energy with the yelling and the screaming and the chasing. Karch, rise and think, hit that ball! He had all the great dialogue, and I loved it once I got to play with him. But that's my first memory of East Beach. 6 years old, down there playing a little just pepper back and forth. Another great memory I have is 3 years later, at age 9,